Anger, it is a really interesting emotion and actually can tell us a lot about our vulnerabilities. It could be an indication, for example, that some of our emotional needs are not being met in a relationship. It could be an indication that we put a lot into a relationship but we don't receive as much back. Hi, my name is Patricia. I'm counseling psychologist registered with HCPC here in the UK, and in today's video I'm gonna be talking about anger in context of how we as women are being taught by the society how we should express anger, or maybe how we should not express it. I think it is a common knowledge now that actually for women to express anger, it is something very not acceptable. It makes us very unpopular, very unfeminine, and very unattractive, especially if we express this anger towards men. In society, there are gonna be so many negative discourses around anger and women, and that's so strong that perhaps because of that, actually for us women, very often it might actually become quite difficult to even know whether we feel anger or whether it is something else, because there's constant expectation that we suppress the anger, and if we suppress the anger means we become more distant from that emotion. And if a woman actually becomes angry, instead of being called an angry woman, we're gonna be called irrational, or maybe emotional, or maybe hormonal. The word anger just doesn't sit very well with women in society. And simply because in society there's so much disapproval for angry women, there's so much rejection of this, that we don't even know at the end whether we feel angry or whether we feel some other emotions. So the first thing is knowing what you're feeling. But then the other problem here is as well, once you know that you feel angry, what do you do with it? Can you actually clearly say to someone that I'm feeling angry, or is that actually prohibited? So if you think about other negative emotions that you might be feeling, like maybe anxiety or fear, we are free to express them, we are free to talk about them. But then you might question, so what it is, why we actually have this difficulty with expressing anger. So when woman she becomes angry, there's possibility of a threat that will bring a change, because anger can motivate a change because you dislike something. So if you dislike something, then perhaps you need to do something to change it, to change your situation, to change your circumstances. And change is uncomfortable. Change creates a lot of anxiety. So in society, possibly we are just being positioned in a way where we don't feel free to express the anger. So we suppress it, or we turn it maybe into a rage where we can be called irrational, for example. So in the first situation where we suppress the anger, we might be displacing it, we might be suppressing it because it's not acceptable for us to feel angry. And then the other reason is that if we were to acknowledge that we are actually angry, then we will get to the roots of the problem, and then we will have to do something about it. So that means becoming familiar with your anger, knowing your anger will have consequences. Harriet Lerner, in her amazing book about anger, she actually gives a list of different questions that we can use to help ourselves to start reflecting on our anger and on the roots of where this anger is coming from. So I'm just gonna put the list of all these questions here. So if you want, you can use them in your daily reflections. And then later in her book, she also talks about the different things that as women we do when we feel angry. So she talks about the situations when we actually vent the anger, when we are angry and we express it in one way. And she says that actually venting our anger is actually quite counterproductive. It only perpetuates the issues and actually prevents the positive change. Because when we're angry, our rational mind just shuts down and we only respond on emotions. So it really blurs our clarity of rational thinking. And anger as well can provoke that kind of state where we want to fix the other person. And what if the other person actually doesn't want to be fixed? What if the other person doesn't want the change? So in psychology, there's a notion that we shouldn't keep the anger in because it can turn into depression or maybe low self-esteem. And that's right. But then on the other hand, only venting anger is going to be really counterproductive for us. Whether we silence our anger, whether we deny it, whether we cry over things, or whether we actually shout and scream about something that we are unhappy about, both examples are quite extreme and very counterproductive, because in both instances the clarity of what we actually feel, the clarity what the actual problem is being blurred. And if you're not clear about what the actual problem is, you cannot actually then look for the resolution for it. Harriet Lerner, in her book, she talks actually about the syndrome of the nice lady. So if you will think about the instance when maybe there was a situation that you were unhappy about something and maybe you start crying about it, or maybe you just completely silence yourself in order to prevent the argument from escalating, and perhaps in order to preserve the relationship. So maybe you cried, maybe you self-blame, but you didn't say clearly what you think and what you feel. And in situations like this, what happens is that we try to protect the other person, we try to preserve the relationship by sacrificing ourselves. But by doing this, by sacrificing who we are, what we want, what our expectations are, we actually might be losing the vision of who we actually are. That sense of self can actually with time become quite blurry. But that in turn again generates even more anger that we need to suppress even more. And this cycle then perpetuates, the anger builds up, and eventually one day we can't just hold it in. So we explode. And then as women, we become irrational, the one to blame for. And then again, the real issue here is not going to be addressed, because then the woman becomes the issue. And then perhaps as a result of that, we might feel guilty, we might self-blame. And again, we might be suppressing the anger, and the whole cycle will be just repeating, perpetuating, and keeping us in that very unhealthy relationship. So that is it for today. But if you would like to learn more on how to actually manage your anger, then you can watch out for more videos I'm gonna be uploading in coming weeks. Or you can just get yourself this amazing book and read all about it in here. Alright, I'm gonna see you in the next one then. Thank you. Bye.